Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Hope everybody's doing good today. We are here today to chat about the new FIDLAR album, Almost Free. FIDLAR is a California-based throwback sort of garage punk, garage rock, and almost skate punk at times band. And to be honest, at first, there was nothing about FIDLAR that ever really came off cheesy, even though it could have very easily could. Their self-titled debut album of years ago, it's a real hidden gem in the current garage rock world. It blended a little skate punk with garage rock and garage punk, but there was also a surf rock vibe from time to time. People certainly compared it to the work of Waves and even a little Best Coast, but for me, I almost thought it was a little bit more in the Black Lips wheelhouse. It was an album that wasn't some, absolute masterclass in songwriting. It was one that you could just kind of tune out to, party to. Every track seemed to be either about sex or weed or cocaine or partying or drinking or a combination of all of those. And yes, at the end of the day, this is like a serious bro garage rock album, but I, for one, had a freaking blast listening to it. Much like Andrew WK's I Get Wet in high school, this album just sort of got me in the mood to go out and have a good time, really amped me up. But in 2015, FIDLAR released 2 in their catalog, and they really dropped the ball. Tracks like 40 Outs on Repeat are just fine and pretty damn good, but the rest of this album is just annoying. Like I said, they almost always had that sort of bro vibe to them, but here, it just came off obnoxious. So it's been like 3 years since we've heard from FIDLAR, maybe even a little more, but to be honest, some of these singles that they've been releasing for a while, like Alcohol, have been really genuinely fun tracks, so we're here to chat about the new album. Album starts off with Get Off My Rock, and this one has this sort of gnarly, aggressive sound to it, very crunchy right off the bat. It's really not that bad of a tune, though, overall. Sure, there are elements of this where it kind of sounds like they're ripping off everybody from Gorillaz to the Beastie Boys. And it's sort of ironic because there are some bars here where you kind of get the feeling that FIDLAR are, calling out other bands that are stealing their sound right now. But for me, this is just where I want to hear them, to be honest. This track just comes off like some no-rules party anthem made by bros who just do this 5 nights a week. It's nasty, it's sweaty, it's crunchy, and it's so unapologetic. And no, this is far from the upbeat sort of skate punk revival that FIDLAR was doing years ago, but still, this is fun. Not to mention this track is so filthy. These guys certainly have a sound. Can't You See, up next, makes things a little bit more upbeat, has this really funky riff that I feel like would have been huge in the 90s. Frontman Zach Carper here. His performance on this track is actually really genuinely different and not where I'm used to hearing him. He sounds soulful in some parts and genuinely cool at others. I mean, it's an interesting sound because I've never really heard them work with so many grooves before. And it's so damn catchy. And it's so unapologetically millennial. It's hilariously millennial. It's simple. It's not pushing any boundaries. But hey, I mean, I'm having fun, at least. And By Myself might even be a more unapologetic party anthem. Hangovers, day drinking, it's all right here. And it's almost glorified on this track. And they make it sound like this is the norm and this is what they do every single week. And sure, that may not be your thing, but FIDLAR at the very least are making it sound like a blast. It's catchy, it's upbeat, and once again, it shows that FIDLAR are working with some serious grooves. Didn't expect to hear that. And in a really weird way, I almost get an Offspring vibe to this, late 90s, more pop than anything Offspring. It's weird. And lyrically, this is bottom of the barrel, but it's a blast. And honestly, Alcohol may be the best track here. It's crunchy, it's sweaty, it's intense, it's completely off the rails. Lyrically, I would even go as far as say this sounds like a mission statement for this album. It's just so blatant and filthy and disgusting. I literally feel like listening to this track that I feel like I should be reaching out to Zach and the guys from FIDLAR and seeing if they're okay. It's by the books. I mean, this riff is just so straightforward, but it really gets you going. At the end of the day, it's basically party rock, but it's fun party rock. And then we get Almost Free, the title track. This one really took me for a loop. This one's an all-out instrumental from start to finish, but it has some serious swagger to it. The horns are anthemic, the funk is seriously real. This is just a great twist. I wasn't expecting any of this. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. It's not very long, but more than anything, in between all of these jock rock anthems, there's just a really pleasant change of pace. In a weird way, I'm almost getting some Hot Rats era Frank Zappa vibes here. It's weird, but I'm game. Sadly though, in the second half, FIDLAR really do seem to drop the ball once again. We have Scam lately, and at its core, like, I feel like there's a lot of the same elements going on here. There's a big crunchy riff, sing-along chorus. We even get some more horns in parts. But my issue here is FIDLAR end up taking a different approach here. They end up straying very far from their usual party hard atmosphere. And because of these sort of different lyrics, honestly, I can't take it seriously and things end up becoming really boring. I'm all for a band that's trying to expand their sound. But for me, this one is just too much of a stretch. And quite frankly, to me, Nuke is just a slap in the face. Honestly, I would love to have heard like a full-length track like this. It's much heavier, it's crunchier, the production is all fuzzed out and messed up, but what we get in its place is literally 40 seconds of a song that's barely written, barely even performed. It's slop, really. This album is really quickly actually taking a turn for the worse, and it doesn't get much better. Too Real is up next. Once again, it's really just sloppy. I feel like the sound isn't terrible. Like, if you really listen closely, there is a good sound down there somewhere. But the production, like, who thought this was a good idea? The production is like laughable here, and between that and these heavily effect-drenched vocals, I'm not feeling this at all. Once again, we see FIDLAR trying to expand their horizons and branch out into some different lyrics. And we get some pretty peculiar choices. We have some socio-political themes. We got the meaning of life. It's all here, and I don't understand why. Sadly, I feel like FIDLAR has a fine sound when they're talking about partying and having a good time, but when we get into these elements, they just become very faceless. Like, at this point, I'm about ready to go back and listen to some of the earlier tracks about day drinking of all things. We get Kick up next, and let's be real, I think it'd be really interesting for the band to go down like a more route where they have, a little bit more of a downtrodden sound. But with this track, it's just not working for me. This one, like, it certainly sounds emotional from a distance and downtrodden and sad, but there really is no emotion when you listen a little bit closer. Once again, it's just sloppy, and this production is terrible again. I'm down for a lo-fi and scratchy rock record, but this just doesn't come off very tasteful at all. And here we see the return of the party lyrics, but this time in a much darker sense, to the point where it just gets depressing. Like, we literally have gone from let's go day drinking, let's have a party, let's get amped up, let's have a good time, to these suicidal thoughts, which, once again, it's been done before in the past, that sort of contrast, that this is the party, this is the after party, but FIDLAR, to me, just aren't at that level and aren't operating at that level to put that point across. Once again, I feel like there's a good track down there somewhere, but not with this production, not with these performances. But by far, my biggest issue with this album, the track that has been haunting me in my sleep every night, is Called You Twice, featuring Flay. This is a super cheesy breakup ballad, the thoughts of which I'd really never thought that I could hear coming from FIDLAR. It's just so damn sappy, and it really doesn't come off with the character that they've been showing over the years. Once again, I'm fine with them showing some different sides, but this is a little bit too much of a stretch for me. And both vocal performances here, from Zach and Flay, it is so ugly. They sound like two teenagers who went on like 2 dates, they had no emotional connection, and then got upset when the other person didn't call back. Like, there is no emotion here. This literally comes off like a Best Coast track if Best Coast had nothing going for them. Vocals are terrible, production's the tune is barely there, and the entire sentiment behind this one, it's just not for me. And early on in the album, Flake, it's alright, it's got a catchy riff and a big sing-along chorus, but that's about it. Things get even worse, if you can believe it, with Thought Mouth late in the album. The lyrics by this point have gotten further and further and further from where I want to hear these guys. Once again here, they sound like they're really, really trying very hard to expand their sound, but the way they're doing it is just not working for me. They sound like a bunch of rich teenagers whose parents have gotten them everything, who are just trying so hard to be angsty, and they're probably just going to go out and get drunk after this. Thankfully, and to my surprise, album ends off pretty well with Good Times Are Over. Like I said earlier, I don't have a problem with the band going for an emotional sound, and here they do it again, but this time it comes off really well. Yes, it's still totally sappy, but at the very least, Zach here sounds like he's singing from his damn heart. It's a genuinely delicate track that gives FIDLAR, in these last couple of minutes, a real human element that I didn't realize that they so desperately needed. And, kind of like I hoped, it sort of paints the first couple of tracks on this album, like Alcohol, in a completely different light here, and kind of brings to fruition some of the negative effects of tracks like that. It's really shocking and eye-opening. In the future, I honestly wouldn't mind hearing more tracks like this. It's pretty awesome. So, final thoughts on this album. I felt like this album started off really strong with a lot of great party anthems and genuinely fun throwback rock tunes. Very funky, very fuzzy and scuzzy. It's the kind of stuff that I want to hear from FIDLAR, but in the second half of this album, I don't really know what happened, but FIDLAR just drops the ball completely, bringing in weird lyrical detours that they don't need to do right now, and trying to go for a more emotional sound when they're just not really trying that hard at it. I'm feeling a light 6 on this album, but let me know what you guys thought down below. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And of course, see you next time. Have a good day, guys.